This is Arsenal transfer target Riccardo Calafiori, and if you're looking at this image, you might think to yourself, he looks a bit like a box-to-box player, maybe an attacking midfielder, perhaps even a winger. Well, if you said any of those options, then you're profoundly wrong, because Calafiori is actually a centre-back. A centre-back, you say, Mev? Yes, that's right. This is actually one of the few positions that Calafiori picks up very often over the course of the game, which is very unusual for a centre-back. If you want another example, here's one, running out of defence. And here's another one on the edge of the box. Calafiori actually picks up these positions very often during the course of a game, and it's one of the many reasons why Arsenal and Mikel Arteta want to sign him this summer. But before we get into that, we're going to visit these images later on. Who is Riccardo Calafiori and what are his strengths and weaknesses? Calafiori is an Italian left-footed centre-back who stands at 6'2", and last season he made 30 appearances for Bologna in Serie A, playing 2,349 minutes, and he actually helped the side earn a 5th place finish in Serie A, and in the process he actually got a call up to the Italian national side and played for them in Euro 2024. So what are his strengths? Calafiori wins 60% of his defensive duels, engaging in nearly 10 per game. He's a guy who's going to stop the opposition by taking a chance, stepping out of defence and breaking up play. In 1v1 situations, he's like a bulldog, attacking with a high degree of precision, channeling the inner spirits of old Italian defenders from years gone by. In possession, he boasts an impressive 90% pass accuracy, with nearly 60 passes per game, and is comfortable under pressure with bird feet and can ping a pass. His aerial duel success rate is 60%, engaging in nearly 4 per game. He's solid in defence and in attack, and especially in both boxes. In possession, in tight spaces, he's really good, with the ability to find a pass and can get himself out of trouble. And all of those stats look really good. So does he have any weaknesses? Well, he's got a couple. He's not perfect. As we've already mentioned, defensively he likes to be aggressive, but against fast opponents they can occasionally get past him and he can struggle against those opponents. There's a lot of highlights of him on YouTube dribbling out with the ball from the back. However, his dribble success rate is only 56%, and this is actually quite low, and especially considering the area of the pitch that he's doing it in, it actually leads to a high amount of turnovers for the opposition and puts his side under a lot of pressure. And he's fantastic with the short passing, however his long passing can sometimes be a little bit over ambitious and could do a little bit of work, with his long pass success rate of only 60%. Again, it's another one where he loses the ball a little bit too easily and often leads to the other opposition putting pressure on his team. So he's a player with a lot of strengths and only a couple of weaknesses, and only at 22 years of age, Mikel Arteta, if he gets his hand on him, will be able to mould him into the kind of defender he wants him to be. However, last season Arsenal kept 18 clean sheets in the competition, more than any other side, and only conceded 29 goals, which is 5 fewer than the next nearest team, which was Manchester City with 34. So why are they signing a defender? Is that really a priority position for them? Let's examine Arsenal's defensive options from last year. They had 8 defenders for 4 positions. The first choice back 4 was White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, with backup options of Cedric, Tomiyasu, Kiwior and Timber. And on paper this looks really good. However, when you take into account that Timber very unfortunately picked up an ACL injury right before the season started, you take him out completely and then you're left with 7. If we're being honest, Cedric isn't quite good enough, and obviously he's been released now, so you're left with 6. And then of those, Tomiyasu picked up a couple of injuries, Zinchenko picked up a couple of injuries. So then really, I would say just towards the back end of last season, Arsenal were only left with 4 out-and-out options in defence and had to have a couple of youngsters on the bench. Now, if we bring everyone back, and we think about the options that they now have in the team this season, if they were to sign Calafiori, now they have Tierney as well. So they've got 9 options here. And like I said, Cedric's gone, he's been released on a free. It appears as if Tierney's also going to be sold because Mikel Arteta just doesn't fancy him. You're then left with 7 defenders. And so Calafiori, wherever you decide to play him, he's left-footed, so let's move him over to the left. There is space in the squad for an 8th defender, and Calafiori can definitely be that. The only thing is he going to get the game time? And I think he is, especially when you consider the injury history of some of the defenders here on screen. White, Saliba, Gabriel have obviously had very good injury records as to date. However, Zinchenko in 21-22 season he missed 12 games. In the 22-23 season he missed 20 games, and in the 23-24 season he missed 8 games. Jurgen Timber in the 21-22 season missed 8 games, 22-23 missed 1 game. So far up to date he had a very good injury record. Then of course it was last season where he missed the entirety of the season due to his ACL injury. And so we're not going to really put blame on Timber for that, but we are going to give him a little bit of an asterisk because coming back from an ACL injury, he's not going to be at 100% right from the off. So you need to be able to give him time to recover properly, and so you don't really want to be rushing him back into the side. And then one of the other defenders, Tomiyasu, in the 21-22 season he's missed 11 games. In the 22-23 season, he missed 16 games, and in the 23-24 season, he missed another 13 games. So between all 8 of them, 3 of those defenders have missed a lot of games of the last 3 seasons. Yes, Timber, we're not going to put too much fault on him. It can't really be helped. However, the other 2 do mean that when you're starting your back 4, you have a couple of options on the bench. When you think about the fact that Arsenal, don't think of the season as a 38-game season, because that's just in the league. We know for a fact that Arsenal are going to be playing a minimum of 46 games this season in all competitions, if you include the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and then the 6 appearances in the Champions League. So if you take into account rotation in the side and injuries that may naturally occur, then of course you're going to need 8 good defensive options. And so I can completely understand why Arsenal are going for a defensive option this summer. However, was it the main priority, or could they Arsenal have afforded to maybe buy someone else in another position first? Well, in my opinion, I don't think it really matters, because I think there is a place up for Calafiori, and I'll explain exactly where in this Arsenal side. If Calafiori was a left-sided centre-back for Bologna last season and Arsenal buying him now this summer, then it stands to reason that he's going to be playing left-sided centre-back for Arsenal. Surely, right? Well, if you do a player comparison between Calafiori and Gabriel, we'll see here that they have very different profiles despite the fact that they're both playing in the same position. You see, on my left we've got Calafiori, and on my right we've got Gabriel. I've got the FB ref profiles for both of these players. Let me try and break it down for you and provide a little bit of context, because if you look at the last 5 rows, which are the defensive numbers, the tackles, the interceptions, the blocks, the clearances, and the aerials won, you can see that based on the FB ref profiles, that Calafiori has actually won 4 out of 5 of them, and the only one that Gabriel has won is the clearances, which is 20 versus 12 per 90. And actually, there isn't too much, I think, difference between the 2 players, because if you take into account the fact that Gabriel is playing for an Arsenal side at the top end of the Premier League table, who are consistently on the front foot and attacking, and they don't have to do too much defensive work because of how dominant Arsenal were last season, then it stands to reason that, Arsenal's defensive numbers are going to be a bit lower for their players, compared to a side in Bologna and Calafiori, who had a lot of defending to do because they were a bit of an unknown team and teams were constantly trying to apply the pressure. So obviously Calafiori would have better tackles, more interceptions, more blocks, more aerials won, and Gabriel would have a few less. So if you were to join Arsenal and play the left-sided centre-back, I think those numbers from Calafiori would naturally decrease a little bit. What's very interesting though is the passing numbers between the 2 centre-backs, because if you look at the passes attempted, passes completed, progressive carries, successful take-ons, and progressive passes received, then it goes to show that these are 2 very different players. And the fact that Calafiori is getting himself a lot further forward than Gabriel is, which I don't think is a slight on Gabriel. I just think that Calafiori is a lot more comfortable on the ball, receiving the ball and passing it out from the back. However, one issue which you really have to take into account is the very top numbers here. The non-penalty goals, non-penalty XG, and shots total, because as we know from last season, Gabriel is an absolute menace inside the box. He's such an asset for Arsenal in the attacking third. And Calafiori, while he did get 2 goals and 5 assists last season, I think compared to Gabriel in the Premier League, when he has to get used to the physicality of the new league, then I think, Gabriel is going to be a massive asset in the box, both offensively and defensively, which I think Calafiori is good at, but probably not to the excellent level like Gabriel is at the moment. But I think the passes going forward is what could be a crucial part of why Arteta wants, because as we saw from the stills very early on, it's not only his ability to break through the lines from the back with his passes, it's actually his ability to dribble forward with the ball. Yes, like I said, one of his weaknesses is that he often dribbles a little bit forward too often and ends up losing possession, and it leads to a high rate of turnovers. However, when he does get it right, look at a position like this. But imagine it's Calafiori on the ball with the likes of Kai Havertz, Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, whichever Arsenal attackers you decided to be. This is such a dangerous position for Arsenal if they were to play like this to be in. And this is actually something that, Gabriel just won't be able to do because he doesn't have the ability. He has, the medium to long-term passing, I think is fantastic. I think aerially is a great threat, but this just provides another option for Arsenal going forward. And when we think about options and different ways to break an attack down, we think about attacking options, maybe even midfield options. We very rarely think about defensive options and in particular centre-back options in a way to break a team down. However, ball-playing centre-backs and their ability to pass through the lines and dribble out from the back is really starting to become a crucial way that managers really want their teams to play, and a different way of trying to break teams down. And I think Calafiori could definitely do that. However, Is he going to be starting week in, week out ahead of Gabriel, a defender who did a phenomenal job for Arsenal last season, started the majority of games, and was involved in the defence that arguably was one of the best in the league? No, I don't think so, if I'm being completely honest. I think one of the things that Arteta really likes about his defenders is that they're versatile. Look at Ben White, right back, and can probably play centre back as well. You think about Zinchenko, he can play left back and in midfield, defensive midfield or central midfield. You think about Jurgen Timber, could probably play along the entirety of the back four, similar with Tomiyasu. And I think actually with Calafiori, what we're looking at isn't necessarily a centre back signing, although he can play there and he had played there for Bologna last season. I actually think he's buying us left back, which, bear with me here, but yes, he played centre back for Bologna last season, but actually prior to that, earlier on in his career, he actually played left back and even left wing back. And I think this is where Arsenal are signing a player. They're going to be signing a left back for the first team, and let me explain to you why. In my opinion, Arsenal currently have 4 left back options: Kiwior, Tomiyasu, Timber and Zinchenko. However, like I touched on at the beginning of the video, Timber was out for all of last season, so you don't really know how he's going to do this season. Zinchenko constantly gets injured, but when he does play, he is good going forward, but defensively he is a little bit suspect. Tomiyasu is always injured, so you can't rely on him to be fit for a whole season. And Kiwior, when he did play last season, I think he stepped up. However, was he to the level that Arsenal needed him to be? Probably not. I think a lot of teams like Liverpool, Bayern Munich, they were targeting Kiwior down this left-hand side and actually found a lot of joy targeting him there. So I think there is someone who, has the ability to step up. Then they are able to take the left back spot and start week in, week out, and potentially cause a bit of an issue for these other players. I think Timber can play right back and centre back. I think Tomiyasu probably can play centre back and right back as well. But I think the big one could be Zinchenko, because he's not getting into the midfield for Arsenal. Kiwior could be back up to Gabriel, but Calafiori could really take up this left back position. But is he suitable to do that? And if you take into account the appearances and the eye test last season compared to what Calafiori could offer Arsenal, then the first victim, unfortunately, probably is going to be Jakub Kiwior, and he just seems a little bit surplus to the requirement. Yes, Arsenal could even run the squad and it could definitely be a good 8th choice option, but at both left centre back as a backup option to Gabriel and as a left back as a starting option, I think Calafiori is better both offensively and defensively than Kiwior. And especially when you take into account that Calafiori is 2 years younger than Kiwior as well. Kiwior is 24, so he should be near enough entering his prime, whereas Calafiori still has a few more years to go in his development. But then you compare him to Alexander Zinchenko, and I think this is where it's going to be the battle for the first starting choice left back at Arsenal. Because as you can see for Zinchenko, the passes attempted, the passes completed, progressive passes, they are all miles better than Riccardo Calafiori's. And actually, considering the fact that Zinchenko can play midfield, it's not a surprise that all of these numbers are very high up. I think what Calafiori can probably offer is that left-sided Ben White at left-back option, where I think he's not going to be as progressive as Zinchenko, and he's going to be better defensively than Kiwior, but he's going to be a bit of a hybrid of both, and actually he's going to be a bit of a Ben White, but at left-back. But if and when the Calafiori deal gets over the line at Arsenal, what do I expect to happen? Well, I think Mikel Arteta is a very ruthless manager, and I think that when he sees an area of the squad that requires a little bit of improvement, he's willing to, go out there and reinforce it and buy someone better, as we saw last season with David Raya and Aaron Ramsdale situation. So I think Calafiori is coming in to eventually be the starter for Arsenal. But if I think about how many minutes I think he's going to play, I think he's going to get very minimal minutes as a rotation option at left centre back behind Gabriel. But really, I do think the majority of his minutes are going to come at left back. I think that Kiwior is probably going to become the backup choice. If not, he's probably going to be sold. I think Zinchenko is going to have to do with being a deputy. And I think the likes of Tomiyasu and Timber, they really need to put the injury issues behind them. And I think that Timber is probably going to be a backup option at right back and right centre back. And I think that Tomiyasu, if he stays fit, is just going to be a bit of a squad player, probably the 7th or 6th choice option. I think Calafiori is probably going to be challenging for that 4th choice defensive option at left back alongside White, Saliba, Gabriel and himself there. And I think it's one where he could probably do really, really well in that situation. But let me know what you guys think. Is he going to be starting for Arsenal? Where do you see him playing for Arsenal if he were to get game time? Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.